Hello everyone and welcome to week 1 of my 20 and 20 challenge series thing. The goal of this series is to create a modern version of Mackenzie Child's 12 and 12 challenge, which I'll have a link for in the description probably if you want to check it out. But for those of you who remember, he built 12 projects over 12 weeks while he was teaching himself Rails. And he was more of a designer, so a lot of his stuff will look better than mine, but a lot of my stuff will be hopefully a bit more advanced because Rails has come a long way and I already largely know Rails. So it'll be slightly different, but hopefully I can still make everything accessible. And I apologize if you can hear my dog barking in the background. Accessible to newer Rails users, basically. But this first week we're building a blog, and each one of these projects will have a few videos associated with it, as well as a subreddit thread dedicated to the project. So you can go to that Reddit thread, which I'll have pinned in each video, hopefully. And on that thread, you can make suggestions for what you'd like to see when we go back and we revisit these projects. So weeks 1 through 10, we'll build the projects. Weeks 11 through 20, we'll revisit the projects and implement any of your suggestions if they're reasonable. Obviously, if you're like, hey man, could you implement Facebook into this project? Just all of it. That might be a bit excessive. Also, there's some privacy concerns with that. But, if you'd like to see categories implemented into the blog, or if we're building like a Reddit clone and you'd like the ability to, have nested replies, and I don't do nested replies, something like that, you can make that suggestion on the thread, and I'll go through it and I'll say, oh yeah, nested replies, that's pretty cool. We could do like a has many through relationship. That seems reasonable. And then we'll go through in weeks 11 through 20 and we'll fix up these projects and make them a bit more production ready. But for now, how about we go ahead and we take a look at the week 1 project before we jump into some code. All right, so when you first get to the page, you can see that we have the blogs being listed on the home page, and there's 10 blogs per page. Each one of these blogs has the title, a thumbnail image, the part of the body being displayed here, I think it's 50 words, and then it trails off to an ellipsis. It has the date that it was last updated at. It has the user that created it. And right now, there's only one user that can create it because we're setting this user to be an admin. There's the view count and the number of comments. So if we come into, well, actually, let's sign in first. So on the top right, you see we have the sign in and the sign up page. We'll sign in to the admin account. So if you, right here, we can scroll through the pages, I guess, just to show that off real quick. There's also an about page, which is just a very basic page, kind of showing how to navigate back and forth. It's got like your, your author page or something. And you can go to these links, and these links will take you to whatever your social media is. Or maybe like an email contact form or something. Now let's get out of here before that guy starts talking. But if we come back to the home page, we can take a look at what an actual blog post looks like. So the first thing we notice is there's a banner image, which is just a starry field for some reason for this one. The title again, the created at, the user that made it, and the number of views. This is a WYSIWYG edited field, so this is rich text. And then we have the comments down below, and because I'm an admin and I'm the same user that posted this, I can delete it. But if another user were to post a comment here, I could also delete that because I'm an admin. But we can say like, this is a live comment. And when I hit comment, you'll notice that it gets added without the page having to refresh. So this is all being done with some remote calls. And the same thing is true for the delete action. So we can delete all these comments, and then we can create another one. And I should note that the final project might look a little bit different than this. This is not being recorded after I made the videos about making this project. This is only made after I made the project that I'm then making the videos about this project for, or something. Let's go to the top right, and we can take a look at the, I guess the account settings is just basic Devise stuff. So this is pretty boilerplatey, but we're using Simpleform, which makes them Bootstrap compatible. But we can go to the new post option, which we have because we're an admin account. And when we come here, you can see that we do have action text set up. as well as an ability to create our posts. So if we just say my first post for the title, and then for the thumbnail, we give it this weird circle thing. And for the banner, let's give it, I don't know, this picture looks fine. And then right here, we can say, let's add some lorem ipsum. Just real quick to demo this properly. We'll generate 5 paragraphs. We'll copy the 5 paragraphs. We'll paste them in here. And maybe we want paragraph 2 to be bolded. Paragraph 3 is, I don't know, inside code. And we'll like bring this down like this. And then paragraph 4 is quoted, and this one's, I don't know, stricken through. So if we hit submit, you'll see that all of this code is being formatted just like that. And that's all done with the Rails 6 action text, which is the tricks editor. And there's our banner image. And if we go back to the home page, we should see that the image is set up right here, which is actually identical to this picture. But yeah, that is the project. Let's go ahead and let's build this thing. All right, so let's go ahead and start by creating our new Rails project. Now, I'm going to be breaking mine up into episodes just so it's a little bit easier to manage and to sort of look back through. So I'm going to call this first project Rails new blog episode 1, I guess, is what my project name is going to be. Feel free to name it whatever you would like to. It's going to run the initial Rails configuration setup that we all are used to, the bundler, and then it's going to run the Rails Webpacker because we are running Rails 6. And I will see you after that finishes because Yarn can take a minute or two to get going. Okay, now that that's done, let's go ahead and let's cd into this blog directory. So just type cd and whatever the name of your project is, and then let's hit Control and L on a Windows to clear out the command prompt, or the terminal, or whatever you're calling it. So first things first, let's go ahead and let's run a sanity check. We'll type Rails space S, and then we'll just make sure that everything is working. So once the server starts, we should be able to refresh. Oh, well, it would help if I actually went to the server. So you want to type in localhost :3000 or localhost port 3000 if you're so inclined. And you can see we're using Rails 6.0.2.1. If you're interested in any of the code, it will all be available on my GitHub repo, which is github.com/dnout/20and20. If you come into week 1, you should see all of the code, as well as my notes, which are just a hot mess of all of the steps that I took so that I can vaguely keep things straight when I'm making the projects. But that's enough shameless plugging. Let's move on to the actual Rails. So if we come back to our terminal, we can hit Control and C to close the server. Let's start by adding Bootstrap. Now, in the past, the way that we did this was we went to our gem file. We added the Bootstrap gem, we ran the bundler, then we went into app, assets, style sheets, we imported Bootstrap in here, and then we went to the JavaScripts folder in here and we did the Bootstrap JavaScript setup. Now, because we're using Webpacker, Bootstrap has changed a bit. And the way that you do it now is with Yarn instead of the gem file, and the JavaScript folder is now at the top level below helpers and above jobs, and it's no longer in the assets folder. So if you open up JavaScript, you can see that there's channels and packs, and inside pack there's application.js. So what we want to do is start off by saying yarn add bootstrap jQuery and popper.js. So we'll add those three. The Yarn installer will run, and while it does that, I can talk about a bit of an issue I ran into. So when I got to the step where I created the comments, I was creating them remotely again, as I did in my Rails remote comments tutorial, which I'll link to in a card somewhere or something. And when I was in the comment view where it's the folders the /comments/ create.js.erb. Inside the ERB file, I was not able to use jQuery. Like the $sign was just totally bugging out. And the way that I fixed this was with a global import inside this application.js. So inside here, what I did was I typed global $$ is equal to jQuery. And this fixed it. What didn't fix it was the next step that we're going to take, which I thought was supposed to fix it, but this makes it work everywhere except for inside the js.erb files. So if anyone knows how to fix this, please leave a comment down below, and I'll update the pinned post, I guess, with whatever the comment is, or I'll pin your comment. But what we have to do next is come into the config webpack environment.js, and we need to add in a bit of stuff. So we have the environment being created here, or I guess assigned. It's not being created. We then need to say const webpack is equal to require webpack. And then we need to do an environment.plugins.append. We want to pass in provide a new webpack.provide plugin. And then we need a parenthesis and an open brace. And I guess my formatter will probably clean that up. So here we want to declare the, $:, quote, jQuery. Oops, I think this is just lowercase jQuery maybe. And then it is jQuery, and then, popper is this array with popper.js, comma, default. And then we have the module exports environment. This is all sort of new to me, so if anyone knows why this doesn't allow jQuery to be used in the js.erb, but the other one does, please let me know, and I'll update the comments down below. Okay, next we come into app, JavaScripts, pack, application.js, which is this one, and we need to import Bootstrap. Which we'll do here, I guess. So we'll say import Bootstrap. And if you're wondering how I'm moving down to the next line, even though I'm in a line of code like that, it's Control and Enter on the Windows. Then we need to import /src/application.scss. So let's save this, and now let's create this. So this is inside the packs folder. We're creating a new folder called src. And inside of src, we're creating application.scss. And inside of application.scss, we are doing an @import tilde bootstrap /scss/bootstrap. And we're saving that. Next thing we're going to do is just create a quick controller so that we can at least check to make sure all of this stuff looks okay. And the plan for the blog is to have both the home page, which has all the blog posts, as well as an about page, which has like a description of yourself and some social media links. So we're going to create that about page right now. We'll do that by typing Rails G controller pages about, and we'll hit enter. And this will run the controller generator. And then inside of our app views folder, we should have a pages controller, or a pages folder with the about.html.erb file. So let's get rid of this and let's start styling this. Now, because we have access to Bootstrap, it means that we have access to the Bootstrap components. So if we type in Bootstrap for documentation, we can click the first link and then go down to components, and you can go down to Jumbotron and you can see what we're about to use to make this. So we start with a div of class container, and we're also going to give it a class. Well, I guess let's do this a bit more organized. Let's start with a div of class container, and then let's create another div with a class of Jumbotron. And then inside this Jumbotron container, let's create a h1 with a class equal to display-4. and let's just say about me. And that's our like header for the page setup. So let's save this, come back to our terminal and run a Rails S. And then let's minimize this and come back to our application. We'll see that we're still on the Yay, You're Writing Rails page. Let's go to our config and routes.rb. So right now you can see that our get is set to pages/about and that our home page is this Rails page. So if we want to go to our about page, we have to type /pages/about, which is a bit cumbersome, and it's also not really what you're looking for, because apparently we have an error here. You'd much rather just be able to type /about if you have a like 2-page website like this with a blog and an about page. And the way to fix this, because we don't have that route, as you can see here, is to say get pages to, and then we want to do the pages controller and the about action. Oops, we want to get about to the pages controller about action. And if you run this, we should go back to that previous error, but it's no longer telling us that we don't have the route. So now let's figure out where this error is coming from. Oh, right here. Inside our webpack environment.js, I typed webpack incorrectly, which broke everything. I mean, of course that's what I did. So now if we refresh, we should see that everything works just fine, unless I broke something else. Okay. So there's our about text, which is coming from our about.html.erb file. So now let's go ahead and let's just add some body down here and make things look a little bit nicer than they currently do. So below this bottom div, let's create another div with a class equal to row. And then let's create a P with a style equal to text -align :justify, which is going to justify the text so that both the left column and the left side and the right side of the text are the same distance from the margin. It just makes it look a little neater. And then let's grab some dummy text. So let's go to Google and look for a lorem ipsum generator. There's a whole bunch of options like Hipsum and stuff, but let's just grab the first one we see. Let's generate a few paragraphs, and then let's just copy one of them into this center justify. We'll do a BR and a BR, and then we'll copy another one. We'll paste that one in. And then we have the closing P tag here, and let's actually fix these indentations and fix this BR. Okay. And then outside of the P tag, we'll do a HR with a class equal to my-for. And then we can close the div, save this, and refresh. And of course, all of this is outside of the Jumbotron because I wasn't paying attention. Like this, and all of this needs to be tabbed over one. There we go. So as you can see, the justify just makes things on each equal on each side. So if I get rid of this justify, it kind of looks a little bit off, depending on what you like, I guess. To me, I just prefer to have something like this if I can control the contents of the text, which here I can because it's just some Hipsum text, so it'll be static every time. So once we have this row done, we're going to close this div, and then we're going to create another one. So we're going to say div, class, and actually for this one, let's come back to the Bootstrap documentation, and let's go to the button groups. And let's just copy this first button group block of code. So instead of having this div class here, let's just throw in another button group, or throw in the button group stuff. And let's edit this around a little bit. So I'm going to use this for my social media links. Oops. So if I save this and refresh, you'll see that there's 4 buttons here. So I might have like the about me, and then I'll say blah, 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 software engineer, blah, 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 blah. I run a YouTube channel and I have social media or something. And then these buttons will be the links to that social media. So what I want is for this to say like YouTube, and when I click it, for it to open my YouTube channel. So let's start with this first one. We have the button type, we have the class, but we also want an onClick. So we'll say onClick equals window.location.href equals, and then we'll open up some single quotes, because if we use double quotes here, it'll escape this string. And then if I type something here, you can see how it's regular text. So we need to use single quotes. Or I guess I should say alternating quotes, depending on how you do this. And we'll say https://github.com/deanout, which is the link to my GitHub, where you can find all of my code that I'm definitely not ashamed of. And then for the actual text, we'll change that text to say GitHub. So if I click on this, hopefully it takes me to my GitHub page, which it does. So now let's grab this whole line and let's paste this a few times. 1, 2, 3. Oops. Okay, I'm gonna full screen this real quick so I can fix this. It's sort of the problem with not having a code formatter in Visual Studio Code, is it's kind of a pain. So the second link after the GitHub, I would like to be my Instagram. Third one will be my Twitter. And the final one will be my YouTube account. So for the Instagram account, we'll just change this to be Instagram and this to deanio.com. For the Twitter, we'll change this to Twitter, and we'll just copy and paste this down. And then for YouTube, do youtube.com/deanout or youtube.com/deanin. And let's save that and let's see if that works. I don't know if I need /c/deanin or if this is just fine like this. It looks like that's just fine. Okay, so that's all of our buttons on our About Me page. Let's move on to some user accounts. So first thing we're going to do is close some of these windows, and then we're going to come over to our terminal. Now let's kill the server. And let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is add the Devise gem and the Simpleform gem. So let's come down to our gem file. And then below this image processing thing, let's add a custom gem area, which is just what I like to do so that I know which gems I added and which ones come with Rails. I don't really do it anymore because now I'm fairly familiar with what I added versus what came with Rails, but when I was starting out, it helped me to know that these are the ones that broke it, and these are the ones that are supposed to be here. So, you know, feel free to diverge a little bit, but this is just how I did it when I was first starting out. So the first gem I'm going to add is Devise, which gives us our user accounts, and then I'm going to add a gem called simple_form. And the only reason I'm using Simpleform is to style the Devise forms, because it lets me use Bootstrap with the Devise forms, and it lets me style them with very little effort. Next, let's come back to our terminal. Let's run a bundle command, which will install these gems. Let's run a Rails g devise :install command, which will set up Devise. You can see here it gives you some steps. We don't really need to follow any of these. We kind of like to be rebels and not obey the rules. But we will do the Rails g devise :views command because it creates a folder in our views with all of the Devise forms. So like the login, log out page and stuff like that. So you can actually edit these if you'd like to. But we're going to set that aside for now. Next, we're going to do a Rails g simple_form: install. And then we're going to give it the --, Bootstrap flag, which is what's going to actually create the Bootstrap forms for us. Then we can do a Rails G Devise user command, which I'm just realizing I didn't do before this, but this will create our Devise user model. That's good. And now we can do a Rails DB :migrate to create this, to add this to the database. And if we come over to our DB folder, migrate, you can see this is all the stuff that it just added. These things are commented out. This lets you confirm your account or like lock accounts or ban accounts or whatever, stuff like that. But it's all commented out for now, so we're just going to leave it alone. It's now added to the database, so let's go ahead and say Rails S. Actually, before we do a Rails S, let's also cover how to seed the database, because I know that's something that not a lot of people do, but I feel like it might not be a bad thing to cover. Let me come over to here, because this is where I kept this. So if we come into DB and we come into seeds, this is sort of the folder or the file that lets you create like dummy objects for your stuff. So let's say you wanted, like you have articles and you want to create like 100 articles when you first create the database. That way there's at least something on the website. You could do that by saying 100.times do, and then inside of here you would do something like article.create, and then, you know, the title is some text and the body is more words here. And this will just create 100 articles with this, so that you could then, like, I don't know, show the articles on a page and do some testing with layouts and stuff. We don't have any articles, but what we do have now is a user account. And we can create a user account by using capital U user.create, exclamation mark, which is called a bang in this context. And then we'll say email : and we're just going to give this whatever you would like. For me, I like to use dean@example.com. For the password, it's just the word password : and then whatever you want your password to be. Now bear in mind, if you're pushing this to GitHub, don't use actual passwords, because the whole universe will be able to see this. So just leave it as the word password or something that's not your real password if you're doing this, please. And then next we have a comma and then password _ confirmation. And this is just the same thing, just verifying that the password you typed in the first form is equal to the password you typed in the second form. And then finally, we're going to do admin : true, and this is something that we're about to add in a second here. So let's save this, come back to our terminal, and we're going to add the ability to have an admin account to our project. And if you've watched my Devise tutorial, then you've seen how I do this. We just do a Rails G migration, and then we're going to say add _admin _to _users, and then we're going to say admin : boolean. We'll hit enter, and then we'll come to our DB migrate file, add admin to users. And one thing that I like to do in here is set this to be default : false. And this is just so that if anyone ever looks in here, they know that I for sure wanted this to be false and not that I forgot to set it to true. Obviously, with the context of admins, it's pretty clear that you don't want everyone to be an admin, but nonetheless, I like to do it. It's just a way that I feel better about my projects. So once that's done, we can run a Rails DB : migrate command. And that will add this admin with a default value of false to the database. And then we'll create this account, but we'll make it an admin by changing it to true. And the way we do that is with Rails DB : seed. And assuming I didn't mess anything up, this should work just fine, and it should add this user to the database. And the way we can check is by typing Rails C, which will open up the Rails console. And inside of here, we can do @user equals capital U user.first. And you can see right here, user1 has an email of dean@example.com, created at, updated at, and an admin of true. It doesn't show you the password here because you obviously don't want to be able to see people's passwords. But If I do @user.admin, that is set to true. And now we can type Control and D to get out of here and Control and L to clear this terminal. Now, that was a bit of a deviation from what I had in my notes, but I think the next step is to create the navbar. So let's go ahead and let's run a Rails S to start the server. And let's actually deviate a little bit more. This is all fairly repetitive for people that have done this before, but it's important to get the fundamentals out for any new viewers. If we come to localhost port 3000, we can type /users/sign_up to go to the new user page where you can see these nice bootstrapped forms. And if we go to log in, we can log into the account that we seeded the database with. So we'll click login. The way that you find all of these hidden routes, like the user's sign in or sign up page, if we kill the server real quick, and I just full screen this, if you type Rails routes, it'll show you all of the routes in your application. So assuming this command runs, we can see right here that you have a prefix. So here it's new_user_session. And all you do is you add the prefix to _path. So if you want to go to the new user session page, you just type new_user_session_path. And that's sort of how you create your link tos in your Rails app. It's just like link to login, comma, new user session path. I just thought it was important to get that out of the way so that if you're ever confused about how people just know what all these routes are, they're not looking them up every time in documentation land. They're just probably running Rails routes. But if you don't full screen it, it can look a little off like this. And the best way to do it is just to expand it as much as possible so that the terminal doesn't bug out like this and like format it all weird. But yeah. So that gives us our Devise routes. We have our user accounts. That's all good. Let's create a navbar. And the way we want to do this is in our views layouts folder, we want to create a new file and call this _navbar.html.erb. And it's got an underscore at the start because it's a partial, which means it's not a page you can go to. Like it's not /about. You can't go to /navbar. And that's sort of what the underscore means. But it does mean you can render it anywhere on a page that you'd like. You can reuse it. And for us, if we go to the Bootstrap documentations, we can come down to navbar. And if I full screen this one, you can see this navbar right here that has like a home button, a brand icon thing, and like this search bar or whatever. We can hit copy here to just grab all of this code. And there's a bunch of examples here, like with actual icons and stuff and all that good jazz, but we're just going to use this one for now. If we come into our navbar and we paste this code in, and don't worry, we're going to change this, and we hit save, we can come back to our server and this won't work, but it's important to see why it doesn't work. So if I go to /about, and hopefully I have the server running, which it looks like I do, but it's not doing anything. Okay, it looks like it just locked up. If I come to /about, you'll see that there's no navbar here. And the reason is, like I said, this is a partial, which means you can put it anywhere on a page, but we haven't actually done that. And if we want the navbar to be on every single page, the best way to do that is to come to application.html.erb. And above this yield tag, what we can do is open up some Ruby code, and we can just say render/layouts, or render layouts/navbar, end quotes. And in this one, there is no underscore because it knows to look for _navbar because you're rendering a partial. So this name only has to match this name after the underscore. If we save that and refresh, we now have the navbar. And if we like resize it, you'll see that it does collapse into this hamburger and it works just fine like that. All basic Bootstrap stuff, but good nonetheless. When it comes to the navbar, there's a lot of stuff we're going to change. The first thing we want to do is change this navbar text to just say like blog or something. we'll do it in all caps because we're very aggressive. We'll change this href to be a link to the root_path. And this is going to break the application because we don't actually have a root path defined right now. Now, eventually, this is going to be our page with all of our blog posts. But for now, what we can do is come down to config, routes.rb, and we can also add a root to be the pages about action. And if we refresh, we now have this that works. And you can see right here, we go from /about to just the localhost port 3000. So it is working as intended. The next thing we can do is for this home link, we can also add it here. So we'll just say root path for this one as well. And we can get rid of this span here because we're just not using that. The next thing we can do is get rid of, or I guess we can move this drop down. We can get rid of this disabled link and we can get rid of the search form because we're not using either of those right now. We can grab this li, which has the drop down, and we can paste it down here. And when we do this, oops, you'll see that everything's kind of a little bit broken. We're just going to leave that for now. It's just so it's out of the way. And we're going to change this link to be the about page. And for the href, we will do an about_path like that. That should work. If we click that, yes, it does. Excellent. Now to fix this drop down, what we need to do is also put this inside of a UL. The issue is if we set this to be a UL with a class equal to navbar -nav mr-auto, and we come down here and we close off the UL, and then we indent all of this stuff over a little bit. One of the things that you can see here is it's over to like the center left-ish area. The way to fix this is to change this from an MR auto to an ML auto, which stands for margin left. So it's automatically going to fill the margin to the left of it, which is going to push it over to the right. And here you'll notice that the drop-down menu is a little bit off. It doesn't all fit because the word drop-down isn't big enough and it doesn't stretch all the way over. You can actually fix this by coming to this drop-down -menu and saying drop-down -menu -right, I think. And this should, yeah, this fixes it. So it pushes it back over onto the screen. So the next thing we want to do is change this from saying drop-down to be something like the username. So one thing we could do is, well, I guess the first thing we want to do is check if the current user, or if the user is currently logged in. So for this, we'll say, we'll open up some Ruby code, but no equal symbol this time. And we'll just say current_user. If current_user, sorry. So if that, then that means the user's logged in. Else, the user is not logged in. And then we end the Ruby code. So if the user is logged in, right here, we want to say current_user.email. If we refresh, it puts our email here. Now, if you've watched my Devise tutorial, you probably know that I like to use this cheap little username, which just splits the email and gets this first part right here and capitalizes it, which is a great way to mock up an application real fast. It's not a username you can log in with, but it does give you something to work with like fake usernames in a sense. And the way you can do that is going into models, user.rb, and then just, I guess right here, we can tab over and we can say def username end. And the way to do this is we say, we have the email, which is dean@example.com. And we want to call, so we have like the self.email. We want to say .split. And then we want to split at the @ symbol, which will give us an array where the first element is Dean and the second element is example.com. And we want to grab the 0th element of this, so we want this element, and this will give us Dean, I guess Dean in a string, but we then want to call capitalize on it, which is going to give us Dean. And it gives us a properly formatted username that we can use everywhere, so it doesn't drive us crazy. So we can just say return email.split at the @ symbol. We grab the 0th element, and then we call capitalize on it. And then if we come back to current user.email and change this to .username, you can see that we have the username right up here. Cool. So the next thing we want to do is in our dropdown is add some options. So this first one will say new post. This is going to be for when we do add in blog posts so that only an admin can create a new post. So for the href, we'll just leave it stubbed out for now, and we'll do a check that says if current user.admin, because we're already checking if the user's logged in. By the time we get to this loop, we can skip checking if the current user's logged in. So instead we just say if current user.admin, which will return true if they're an admin or false otherwise. And then we can just say end right here. So this will work for this account, but if we were to log out and create another account, you wouldn't be able to see this new post. And then below that, let's do like a account settings option. And the link for this is the edit_user_registration_path. I think. This should take us to user/edit. Yeah, it does. Okay. So that's good. And then finally down here, let's do a logout button. And the logout button is a little different. We could have done this with the other ones, and I might actually change that right now. But let me just do this, and I can do it while I'm talking. So for the logout button, what we want is a link to logout. Then we need the delete or destroy user registration path. Or, ooh, that would have been bad. Destroy user session path. Then we need to do a class of dropdown item. Now, if I do this, and I did it correctly, when I click on this, it should not sign me out. It'll send us here, and it says no route matches get user/signout. And the reason for this is you need to include a thing at the end that says method : delete, which is basically saying delete. You need to call the delete method for the destroy user session path. And if we come back here, refresh, and we do this, it will now actually delete the user session instead of trying to get the user session, which is a little quirky, but as long as you know to use the method delete, you should be fine. Now you'll notice up here that we no longer have this dropdown. That's kind of a problem, but the reason is we don't have a current user signed in, so we're down into this block where there is just nothing. And what we want here is, I guess, 2 links. So let's copy this about link. We'll paste it in, and then we'll paste in another one. We'll tab it over so everything is, formatted a bit, like that. So what we want to do is, for this first A tag, we'll say link to sign up, and then we'll say new user registration path, and we'll give this a class of nav-link. And then we can copy this and paste it down here. And instead of sign up, this will be sign in. And then this will be a new user session path. And this can be a get because we're just trying to get the new user session path. So if we click that, it'll let us log in, and then we can log out. And all of that stuff is working in our Navbar. Now, if we log out and we sign up and we say test@case.com with the password of password. This will let us create an account where the admin is false by default, and you can see here that we no longer have an ability to create a new post. Okay, so that's going to do it for this episode. In the next episode, we'll take a look at implementing the posts and the ability to actually upload a lot of the blog stuff that we were talking about. This first one is kind of just creating the skeleton of the application so that we have stuff to work with in the next episode. If you're interested in offering suggestions, the Reddit thread will be at the pinned comment or in the description, I guess. So you can go there and you can say, hey man, I'd really like a category system or whatever. And it's just a way for me to keep it in one place rather than spread across 5 videos. But of course, comments on each video are welcome because it does help the algorithm, and it might help me if I'm actively recording those episodes to change some things while I'm doing it. If you like this video, remember to like it. It helps with the algorithm, ranks it higher, and it'll get more people seeing it. If this video didn't help you, then dislike it because it sinks us in the algorithm and we don't need more bad tutorials on the front page. I feel like we've all experienced those where we're trying to study for a class or something and it's just a guy recording with a potato. So let's make sure that if this is bad, send it to the bottom. Make sure no one ever sees it. But for now, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.